Hello, and welcome back to the Business English Podcast, the podcast designed to help non-native English professionals supercharge their business English skills. I'm your host, Rob, and I'm excited to bring you another full-power episode to enhance your communication skills in the business world. In the business world, effective communication is more than just presenting ideas eloquently. It's about negotiation, persuasion, and compromise. Whether you're discussing a contract, renegotiating a deadline, or hammering out the details of a project, being able to express your needs clearly and assertively while respecting the needs of others is key. And that's exactly what we'll be diving into today. In this episode, we'll explore the art of bargaining and compromising. These are essential skills in business, and understanding the right phrases and vocabulary to use can make a real difference in your negotiations. We'll dissect the phrases and vocabulary you need in addition to the scenarios in which you can use them. So whether you're a project manager looking to get your team on the same page, a sales professional trying to close a deal, or a business owner negotiating a new partnership, this episode will equip you with the English phrases and techniques you need to be more persuasive and effective in your communications. And remember, practice makes perfect. The goal here is not just to understand these phrases, but to incorporate them into your everyday professional life. Don't worry if they feel unnatural at first. The more you use them, the more comfortable you'll become. So, grab your notepads and your pens or your favorite note-taking app, because this is going to be an extremely valuable lesson you don't want to miss. But first, an all too familiar intro. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business English Podcast, helping professionals communicate more effectively, more confidently, and with impact. With your host, Rob, from Energetic English. Let's get down to business. All right, let's kick off with our first section for today, the art of bargaining in business. Bargaining, simply put, is the process of negotiating the terms of an agreement, typically focused on the price, delivery, or conditions of a product or service. It's like a dance, a delicate balance between getting what you want and maintaining a positive relationship with the other party. Whether you're haggling at a market or negotiating a multinational corporate deal, the principles of bargaining remain largely the same. It's all about knowing what you want, understanding what the other party wants, and finding a way to reach an agreement that satisfies both parties. But remember, in order for bargaining to be successful, effective communication is absolutely essential. In any language, the phrases and words you use during a negotiation can significantly influence the outcome. The right words can encourage an open dialogue, build trust, and pave the way for agreement, while the wrong ones can shut down negotiations and create misunderstandings. Let's look at a couple of common phrases you might use when bargaining. As ever, throughout the episode, I will be repeating the target phrases twice and then pausing afterwards, giving you the opportunity to note them down, repeat them back, drill them, and internalize them for when you need them most. So, the following three phrases could be used to propose a different price or condition. 1. Could we possibly? Could we possibly? 2. What if we? What if we? 3. How about? How about? And here are three more to show flexibility. 1. I can see your point, however. I can see your point, however. 2. We're willing to consider. We're willing to consider. 3. I'm flexible on. I'm flexible on. Now, in terms of vocabulary, I'm sure you're well aware of the word negotiate. It is a key word when bargaining and it refers to the process of discussing terms. However, two more here is the term concessions, and this refers to things you are willing to give or relinquish in a bargaining process, and a counter offer. This is an alternative offer you propose in response to an offer from another party. Now, let's bring these phrases to life with a real-life scenario. Imagine you are discussing a contract with a supplier. They propose a delivery schedule that just doesn't suit your needs. How do you handle this situation? Okay, so the supplier says, "We can deliver all the items by the 15th of the month." You say, "I see your point. However, we really need the delivery by the 10th. Could we possibly arrange an earlier delivery?" The supplier then says, "That might be a bit tight. What if we deliver half by the 10th and the rest by the 15th? You reply with, "That sounds like a reasonable compromise. Let's go ahead with that plan." So, there you have it. That's an example of how you might use these bargaining phrases in a real-world business situation. Okay, so moving on from bargaining, let's now discuss our second section here, the role of compromise in business negotiations. In its simplest form, compromise involves each party in a negotiation agreeing to give up something in order to reach an agreement. It's a way to find a solution that, while it may not be the perfect outcome for either party, is satisfactory to both. Compromise becomes necessary when we want to avoid conflict, maintain relationships, and most importantly, when we seek solutions that can accommodate both sides. It's an essential part of teamwork, leadership, and partnership in business. So, 3 key phrases to remember when seeking a compromise could be 1. Let's meet halfway. Let's meet halfway. 2. Would you consider? Would you consider? 3. In exchange for? In exchange for? Now, it's worth noting that these 3 phrases really convey a willingness to find a solution that respects both sides. Now, when it comes to vocabulary, understanding words like middle ground, trade-off, and settlement can be helpful. Middle ground refers to a position or solution that is mutually acceptable to both parties. A trade-off is something that you agree to give up in order to get something else. And a settlement is a formal agreement or decision that ends a disagreement. Now, let's explore how these phrases might be used in a real-life scenario. So imagine you're working on a project with a team and there's a disagreement on the approach to take. One of the team members says, "I believe we should focus our efforts on market research before developing the product." You then say, "I understand your perspective, but I also think product development is crucial. Would you consider a middle ground where we divide our resources between both activities?" The team member then says, "I see where you're coming from. In exchange for a stronger focus on market research, I'm willing to allocate some resources to early product development. Let's meet halfway." You then say, "That sounds like a reasonable trade-off. Let's settle on that." And that is how compromise works. It's all about finding balance and ensuring all the voices at the table are heard. Now, before jumping into the next section, I wanted to take this opportunity to let you know that if you wanted to get more out of the Business English podcast, then that is possible. For example, full transcripts complete with timestamps so you never miss an expression, phrase-focused one-pagers to quickly refresh your memory before that next last-minute meeting, pronunciation support to assist with the trickier elements of business English, live read-along transcripts, quizzes, and much more. If this sounds like it could be useful, then the Business English Podcast Premium subscription could be for you. Check out the details at the link in the show notes. Right, on with the show. So, having taken a fairly deep dive into both bargaining and compromising, it's time for our third section: differences and similarities between bargaining and compromising. Both of these concepts are central to the world of business negotiations, and while they are distinct processes, they also are interconnected. Bargaining and compromising are both strategies we use to reach an agreement. They are tools in our toolkit for negotiation, and knowing when to use each one is a skill in itself. They both involve communication, understanding the other party's needs and wants, and seeking a mutually beneficial solution. However, bargaining typically involves a back and forth dialogue, where both parties are negotiating terms, often centered around a specific point like price or delivery terms. Like I said, it's like a dance where each party makes a move and the other one responds. On the other hand, compromise is more about finding a middle ground where both parties can be satisfied. It often involves each party conceding or giving up something for the sake of agreement. It's more of a collaborative approach where both parties work together to find a solution that meets both their needs. In reality, most business negotiations involve a blend of both bargaining and compromise. You might start off bargaining on the price, but then compromise on the delivery terms. The key is to be flexible and adapt your strategy to the situation. Knowing the right phrases and vocabulary for both bargaining and compromising, as we've explored today, can really help you navigate these negotiations more effectively. The next time you find yourself in a bargaining situation or needing to compromise, remember the phrases and vocabulary that we've discussed today. And now, let's move to our final section of today, the do's and the don'ts of bargaining and compromising. While knowing the right phrases and vocabulary is crucial, understanding how to use them effectively and tactfully is just as important. So, here is some etiquette and a few tips for successful bargaining and compromising in the business world. Let's start with the do's. Number 1. Do actively listen. Understand what the other party wants. This is crucial in both bargaining and compromising. By actively listening, you'll be able to identify the areas where you can negotiate or compromise. 2. Do show flexibility. Remember, negotiation isn't about winning. It's about finding a solution that benefits all parties involved. Show that you're willing to adjust your stance or offer for the sake of reaching an agreement. 3. Do use respectful language. Politeness goes a long way in a negotiation. The phrases we discussed earlier are designed to communicate your desires while also showing respect for the other party. Now let's touch on a few don'ts. 1. Don't get personal. It may seem obvious, but keep the focus on the issue at hand, not the people involved. Criticizing or blaming can quickly sour negotiations and makes compromising much more difficult. 2. Don't rush. Good negotiations often take time. Rushing can lead to mistakes or overlooked details. Be patient and give the process the time it needs. 3. Don't be afraid to walk away. If an agreement isn't in your best interest and no compromise seems possible, it's okay to walk away. Not every negotiation will be successful, and that is just fine. Now, of course, these tips are general guidelines. However, every negotiation is unique, and you'll need to adjust your approach depending on the situation and the people involved. But, that said, keeping these do's and don'ts in mind can help you navigate your negotiations more effectively. And with that, we will wrap up today's episode on phrases for bargaining and compromising. We've journeyed through the art of bargaining, the role of compromise, the differences and similarities between the two, and the do's and don'ts when navigating these key business strategies. Remember, the phrases and vocabulary we've covered today are more than just words. They are tools that can help you negotiate and compromise more effectively in your professional life. And like any tool, they become more effective with practice. So don't be afraid to use them, even if they feel a little unfamiliar at first. Now, we do love hearing from you, and we encourage you to share your experiences with us. How have you applied these phrases in the workplace? Were they helpful? Do you have any other tips or insights to share? We'd love to hear from you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe to the Business English podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues who may also find it useful. Your support helps us reach more listeners and make a bigger impact. Thank you for tuning in to the Business English podcast. Until next time, keep it strictly business. You have been listening to the Business English podcast. Remember to subscribe, leave a review, and we'll see you next time.